and course development and creation for teaching, learning, and training purposes. AAU eLearn Africa.
No? Are they going to be at the end? Oh, sorry. Oh, I missed the. Thank you very much. It's getting late in the day. Right. I would like to call on Professor Tuana Kope, the Vice Chancellor of University of Pretoria, South Africa. Ah, right. He's not here. So who's going to do the presentation? You have the different rapporteurs. Right. I got it now, I hope. So can we have the rapporteurs, please? There is no movement towards the podium. So. Yes?
So you could just put them by subteam 1, then to subteam 6. Maybe.
Yeah, the rapporteurs from all sub-themes, please, would you like to come forward? Yeah, please. So we'll go from 1 to 6, right? Yeah.
Who's taking 1?
Number 1? Good. Yourself? You would like to? Right.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Millicent Ifriye, and I was the rapporteur for subtheme 1, which focused on doctoral education. So in the next 5 to 10 minutes, I'll be taking you through a summary of the proceedings of the session. So the session was chaired by Professor Lillian Salami, who is the second vice president of the AAU and also serves as the vice chancellor of the University of Benin in Nigeria. And 5 papers were presented in line with the theme, which is doctoral education. We had a presentation from Dr. Kamara, which was focused on arrows, targets, and archers in PhD programs in Africa. We had another from Prof. Anne-Marie Pelsa from the Northwest University, South Africa, which also focused on collaboration as the hallmark of excellence and magnificence in doctoral education in Africa. We had a third presentation from Professor Nyasulu from the Stellenbosch University in South Africa, also focusing on improving the quality of doctoral education in Africa. And then also towards harnessing the power of collaboration by Dr. Precious Ekwere from the University of Western Cape, South Africa. And then lastly, we had a presentation from Ms. Nodumo Dlamini, who serves as the Director of Knowledge Management and ICT at the Association of African Universities, also focusing on towards quality graduate research supervision in African universities. So all presenters agreed that Doctoral education is crucial to building research capacity and enabling knowledge production, as well as collaborations, fostering innovations and addressing developmental challenges in Africa. And that significant progress had been made in expanding doctoral programs and training in the continent. Increased efforts have been made by various universities to actually expand doctoral training in the continent. However, the progress is being impeded by various challenges, and most of these 5 presentations actually focused on these challenges, made recommendations, and then we also had discussions from various participants who brought in some very key points that contributed to the conversation. So some of the key challenges that were noted was limited funding. This was very prevalent in all the presentations as well as the discussions as well. And then there was also an issue of limited resources, especially in line with infrastructure. There was also an issue of poor supervision in terms of limited and then the quality of supervisors. There was also issues of the willingness and then the readiness of supervisors to support their students, and then also limited academic support systems in terms of prioritizing the well-being of students, and then also limited industry linkages. There was this issue that most universities have become ivory towers and like to work in isolation, and there was need for link with industries. And then the issue of brain drain was also heavily discussed, and we had gender disparity in terms of few women in doctoral programs. So these are some of the key areas that came up in the discussions. I mean, after the presentations, there was a need to establish specialized research universities that could be at par with the Oxfords, with the Cambridge, and other Ivy League universities in the West. And then there was need to encourage African governments to invest in research, as well as adopt a module for Africa PhD, one that speaks to address the challenges of African universities or developmental challenges of the continent as a whole. Some of the discussions spoke towards the fact that most of the PhD programs and modules were just adopted from the West and do not really respond to some of the challenges of the continent, and that there was a need for us to design and adopt a module that actually speaks to the developmental challenges of the continent. And then also the need to determine the indicators of quality. There was this presentation that spoke to quality standards in terms of doctoral programs and doctoral training, and there was a need for us to understand the various indicators and the parameters that spoke to quality, what actually makes up the measurement in terms of quality. And then university industry linkages was also discussed as a key component, and then also the need to improve doctoral assessment through needs assessment to link to national, regional, and continental agendas such as CESA, such as the Agenda 2063, among others. So these number of recommendations were made. The need to enhance funding opportunities, like indicated earlier, government to support, as well as external sources, capacity building for supervisors, the need to reevaluate approach to design of doctoral programs, the need to adopt a more robust support system, and then translation of research output through entrepreneurship, as well as enhance intra-Africa university collaboration and partnership. This was actually very eminent in the discussions because I think in line with the theme of this conference is advancing excellence in higher education, and we think that key collaboration, strategic partnerships is very key in terms of advancing higher education as well as doctoral programs as well. So in conclusion, I think the presentations and then the House decided that designing a pedagogy for training postgraduate supervisors was very important. There was a need to reflect on the measurement of quality for doctoral training, as well as customized PhD models from the West that actually spoke to or responds to the issues of Africa, and then fewer quality PhD graduates are actually better than many low quality PhD graduates. And finally, we may need to harvest all these recommendations, put them together and share with postgraduate schools across the continent. So this is just a summary of some of the conversations. We put them in a more detailed document. The conference communique will be ready, and I'm sure you will have more details. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks. It just came to my mind, there is, we have some model actually of doctoral level education in the centers of excellence. I was on the World Bank, one of the World Bank evaluation teams. And in fact, there are some very good PhDs carried out in some of the centers we visited. So if you look at it, when there is money available, there are facilities, and then there is this partnership with a research group in a developed country in America or UK or that, and then a good supervisor, somebody with track record in research. And I think this model worth studying because it gives us the components or the ingredients for getting a good doctoral education. Sub-theme 2, please. Sheikh Yassin, introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Collins Bao. I'm from the University of Namibia. I sat through the presentations within sub-theme 2, which spoke of institutional differentiation. The initial program had slotted or scheduled 4 presentations, but unfortunately, due to absenteeism, we only managed to have 2 presentations, which were presented by Dr. Ephraim Tekle Yakub from the College of Education and Behavioral Studies, Koteb University in Ethiopia. And the presentation was titled "The Journey Towards the Formation of UAS in Ethiopia, Drivers, Enablers, Barriers, and the Way Forward." And the second presentation we got was from Ms. Anna Leonard from the University of Namibia, who presented a paper on research excellence in public universities in Namibia, a bibliometric study. So as with every other presentation and plenary session that we have been attending here, the goal was to try to examine the ways in which each of the aspects discussed within the sub-themes would contribute towards the realization of excellence in academic, especially in institutions of higher education within the continent of Africa. And the papers presented here also spoke to those kinds of concerns. To begin with, the paper presented by Dr. Yakub focused on the concept of university differentiation, which simply references a context in which universities are segmented and allowed to focus on specific areas of research and study. For example, the setting up of universities that are largely centered on research, universities largely centered on applied sciences, as well as comprehensive studies, comprehensive universities which offer technically all programs that we can think of. So in using Ethiopia as a case study, Dr. Jacob, first of all, gave a background of the nascence of higher education in Ethiopia, which he argued began around the 1950s by the setting up of the University of Addis Ababa. Contemporarily, he claims or argues there are presently about 50 public universities in Ethiopia, and until the early 2000s, all, if not most of the universities in Ethiopia were largely comprehensive universities. And the government, through what he called the Educational Development Roadmap, decided to set up universities that are highly specialized And as such, there were three basic characteristics or basic universities that were set up. Firstly, some universities remained comprehensive universities, the others became universities of applied sciences, while others were made to become research universities. So he also explained, which is also something that perhaps we need to take a note of as a very important aspect with regards to the potential to achieve research excellence in Africa. He explained that the need for this kind of differentiation was largely based on the observation that the country, as it developed, needed universities that responded to changing needs, especially within industry, and therefore the need for highly specialized teaching universities. And of course, despite the fact that this was a noble goal, it was also met with quite a number of challenges, which included, for example, skepticism expressed by industry with regards to the profile of the students who had graduated from the universities. There were also observed resistances from universities who would want to preserve what we would consider universal or university culture, and therefore resisted changes. There was also an observed lack of interest, as well as facilitation from stakeholders, especially the unwillingness of industry to assume or absorb students that had graduated from highly specialized universities. Of course, he intimated at length about the importance of such kind of a move, in that it not only resonates with global trends, but also responds positively to the needs of the African continent, which are always in a constant state of mutation. After the presentation, the discussions emanating from there made the following resolutions and observations. First of all, the challenges that perhaps have been encountered through during the process of differentiation could actually be overcome if platforms were created within which government, industry, as well as universities could actually come and discourse of such issues in order to foster cooperation. There was also an observed need for a drive towards the setting up of, as well as the implementation of policy to guide this kind of transition, which would then perhaps result in proper capacity building through differentiation. And they were observed potential benefits that could actually culminate from such kind of differentiation, in that it could actually positively impact the development in the country. There was also an agreed need for synergies within institutions in Africa, especially those that had also undergone this kind of differentiation. Perhaps universities needed to link up, compare notes, where success stories have been recorded. Those could actually be used as yardsticks for the implementation of such kind of differentiation in other universities that had just begun this kind of process, as it were. The second presentation from Ms. Anna Leonard from UNAM was on research excellence in public universities in Namibia, and it was actually a bibliometric study. What Ms. Leonard focused on was an examination of the progress that has been made by universities in Namibia, public universities to be precise, and the University of Namibia, as well as the National University of Science and Technology, to be specific. It was a longitudinal study which examined trends in publications, research publications, from 1996 to the present. And initially, as a starting point, Ms. Leonard, like most of the speakers that have stood here, reiterated the importance of scientific research in Africa, insofar as it has the potential to actually critically benefit Africa socially and economically. Further drawing context from the AAU Declaration of 2004, in which she quotes the resolutions from there advocating for universities in Africa to prioritize research and research output. She observed a gradual increase in research output in Namibia, observing that, for example, from around 1996 to around 2016, there were largely negative research output. Not much was recorded during that period. However, there's been gradual increase and improvement in publication and research, scientific research within these universities from the year 2017 onwards. And of course, despite the fact of this particular kind of development and increase in research output, she bemoaned the fact that most African universities are still absent from university rankings, global university rankings, and only a few, especially universities in Nigeria, South Africa, as well as Egypt, seem to always feature prominently within these particular ranking systems. And therefore, the majority of universities in Africa continue to remain excluded in these particular ranking systems. The presentation also intimated that there was need for African universities to perhaps develop their own research management systems that could form maybe the cornerstone of local rankings of universities, some new form of ranking system in Africa, so that at least most, if not all, of our universities find some kind of ranking in the process. And in doing that, there is need for the creation of perhaps a tool that harnesses research in order to foster fair and balanced assessment of universities, as well as the assessment of progress made by universities with regards to research output. She concluded by observing that the need for these kinds of developments, the research management system as well as tools that could harness research, was largely based on the observation that the global ranking systems are oftentimes debatable, especially considering that the matrices that they use to measure and rank universities tend to disadvantage most African universities, specifically the concept of citations. And she gave quite a detailed presentation on the nature and structure of such kinds of citations. Discussions and resolutions emanating from that particular presentation observed that the current rating system indeed are quite subjective and thus debatable. We can either choose to accept them or challenge them. And as such, we need to formulate our own kind of research research output measuring mechanisms that could perhaps truly reflect the kind of progress that African universities have actually made towards that particular goal. And this, she observed and was quite agreed upon by most of the panelists, most of the audience rather, present, was because, for example, with regards to citations, whilst most of the African universities, as well as scholars, have control over research output, we often do not have control over citation, and hence citation indexes, for example, disadvantage us a lot. And of course, as such, it becomes very imperative that African universities strive to give more exposure to our own research for it to be visible, published, as well as references. And there were also concerns that perhaps we need to engage governments. Governments should also take a leading role in funding research, as well as stepping into local research for both economic as well as social development. I thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. While my slide comes up, my name is Frank Asifua. I'm with the AAU, and I'll be presenting on Subteam 3, which is on partnership, cooperation, and internationalization. So this session was chaired by Professor Juliet Tundala, I hope I didn't butcher the name, who is the coordinator of the AAU European Office and UNESCO Chair in International Education and Development. There were 4 presentations that were held in this session, which was from Professor Rashid Siraj, who is a Director of Strategy at Mohammed VI Polytechnic University in Morocco. He talked about Toward African Academic Excellence, a new strategy for sustainable agriculture, water and climate research, learning and innovation. The second presentation was from Dr. Sylvia Nkandawire, who you just saw a few in the previous session, who is based in Accra, the AAU as well. And she was speaking about the Pan-African Scientific Networks of Excellence, the challenges that they face and the prospects that they see for the future. And the third presenter was Professor Sibisu Moyo, who is a DVC research at Stellenbosch University in South Africa. She discussed advancing excellence in research through internationalization, some case studies that she had. And then the last presentation, but certainly not the least, was from Professor Muwoyo Busire Onyancha, who's from the University of South Africa. And he talked about harnessing research collaboration for research excellence in Kenya and infometric analysis across research fields from 1996 to 2023. So it was largely observed in the session and the presentation that there are many partnership and collaborative efforts that has been held across the continent between universities in here, between private sector and public sector, as well as even institutions outside the continent. And these have largely yielded great rewards, as we can see, and how it has been able to advance the quality of higher education on the network. However, the main challenge from this was that the project usually ends, or the partnership ends after the project is completed. And that is a challenge, a recurring theme that kept through that session. So there was also a discussion whether there can be funding for indigenous African partnerships that would solve specific problems that are Africa unique. And then the third point was that there isn't much data on the things that have been done on the continent, as well as the successes of projects and then programs that have been held on the continent. So there were 3 recommendations that were made. The first was to advocate, and that is taking the advantage of various platforms that are available, such as calls for papers, summits. All of these we can use as a way in order to be able to push our agenda to advocate for support for thematic areas we feel that are important that Africa needs to work on. The second is a collaborative effort where institutions work together in order to be able to solve goals and helping each other, writing proposals together, such as the Erasmus program and then the Horizon Europe Africa calls. Those can help in order to make sure that the thematic networks and the collaborative efforts that we are having as Africans can be maintained and can be projected into the future. Also, events such as these and others which are across the continent and even international can be held by institutions in order to be able to push the agenda of what is needed in order to be able to throw more light on what is needed in Africa. In the discussions, it was made that there should be an Erasmus-like program for Africa, and the Secretary General highlighted that it was very important for something like that to be done in order to make sure that these partnerships and collaborations continue. However, the funding can also be sourced internally because of usually the restrictions that are gained when we source funds from external partners. The second point was that the social norms and culture of Africa needs to be ingrained into the type of projects we do to make sure that whatever we're doing, it supports the society, and then we'll be able to get through with that. Also, it was discussed that some parts of Korea and China are integrating vocational skills into their curriculum to be able to help their students to have skills while they are coming out of their institutions. It is something that African universities can also look at in order to make sure that entrepreneurship is promoted on the continent. In conclusion, it was largely agreed in the session that there needs to be a higher level of collaboration on the continent. We need to leverage each other's efforts on the continent because most of the challenges that we face are similar. So a solution that is found in, let's say, North Africa can actually be implemented in the South or in the East. So if we work together and we find solutions towards our problems, we are then able to solve our communal problems, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel over and over. We must also work together to raise funds and then solve the problems that we see on Africa through partnerships. And that is where I leave the presentation, and it was a very successful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Irene Dufiade, and I'm also from the Association of African Universities. And I was the rapporteur for Sub-Team 4 on university industry linkages. I'm fortunate to say that my session was very unique, with very unique topics that we discussed. And so for my session, we were supposed to have 5 presentations, but for technological challenges, we couldn't have the first presentation. So we have 4 of them. They were, the first one is responding to industry skills challenges with degree that work, integrating employed aligned certification into academic programs by Mark Hudson of the UK People's Set. Second, we have determining a success framework to improve emerging farmer entrepreneurship in the Northwest Province, South Africa, by Dr. Van Persie, a senior lecturer at Northwest University. The third one is the quadruple helix model of innovation to higher education. The news case, Professor Harmony Musiyarira, the Executive Dean, Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment. And then the last one is Positioning Africa's University for Successful Industry Government Trade Agency Linkages, a case study for the Vital Model by Professor Sombo Muzata of University of James Madison, US. What made the session interesting was that there were different sections that came together to form the industry, university industry linkages. So when we talk about the first one, which is responding to the industry challenges with degrees that work integrating, what came through was a research work done by the World Economic Forum of 2017, which states that by 2 decades, we would have about 15 to 20 million of the youth going into the workforce. But as we always say, the youth are not always prepared. We have big students that are coming into the educational, the job market. And so the need for us to incorporate certifications into our mainstream degrees that we are doing, so that we would be able to know and align what the industry needs. And so these are some of the recommendations that we got from this session. It is to say, firstly, is to strengthen the university industry partnerships, where we would know what the industry needs so that we can align it to what is being taught. The second start is to focus on employability and career. You look at some of the universities that comes out, and some students don't have any internship experience before they go out. But for the case of the ACE project, we have a section where students are asked to do internships, and so they are aligned to what the industry also need. And also the final one, which is a recommendation, is to promote the value of education, highlight the importance of education in preparing graduates for the workforce. So on our second presentation, we have one from Professor Fan, who discussed the theme, determining a successful framework to improve emerging farming entrepreneurship in the Northwestern Province of South Africa. And his research is to improve entrepreneurship among emerging farmers in the Northwest Province. One challenge that they have found was that they didn't have enough education. And so they couldn't manage how they can go from being students right into the industry. And so one key challenge that they had realized was that the money, the seed money that they were given to them, they were not able to utilize all of that. About 90% of the money was waste because they didn't have the requisite information from industry to do that. And so what was needed to do, and then recommendation from this research that was made by Professor Fan, was that there should be a collaboration between government and then the private institutions, because these are the people who know what the farmers would need. This will enable them put into use the monies that has been allocated to them to fully utilize the resources that have been given to them. And then the obvious points that runs through will be to give them the comprehensive support and training, because if they don't have even financial management skills, how are they going to utilize the seeds money that has been given to them? The third presentation, which was on the quadruple helix of modern innovation, which was very crucial, and then it brings together government, academia, industry, and society. Sometimes we call it the triple because we took out the society from it, but it is very crucial because when you take society out of it, you can't build an ingrowing solutions to our challenges. And so for this presentation, what was really clear about it was that we need to see from different perspectives. We can't see as just academics, and so we do things as academics, but we should see things by the industry, by the government, and also by the society, as it is crucial to our growth and sustainability. He made an example of a PhD student who came to him with a problem to a solution. When he made the student talk through all the problems, they came to a wrong conclusion, a wrong answer, and then they had to go through, he had to give the person a different dynamic. And this dynamic gave them a right solution. So the student said, "Prof, why didn't you give us the solution from the start?" He said, "No, you would have to be given a divergent view of how things work so that when you move to the industry, you would understand how things work." The last model was on a case of Vital, which is the successful industry and government trade linkages, and it talks specifically about globalization and how now we are here because of globalization. We were transported here through the planes, through the cars that we go through here. But how were these done? Because students were given training on specific things that enabled them to achieve what we have with the internet that we have. I'm sure people are streaming online because of globalization. But to not react, exactly the way she said, not to react to globalization, but to accept it and have a way that it would help us in our, in the interest of Africa. So these are some of the recommendations that we got for her. And then we'll take the third one, is that to harness the power of higher education, recognize that the role of higher education in unlocking Africa's development. So in conclusion, from our session, we realized that we still need to do a lot more of collaboration with industry, government to give us policies. We also have to do advocacy, which the AAU is strongly doing. And I think this conference is an opportunity for us to do that and to move Africa to get a quality higher education. Thank you very much.
Hello, good evening. My name is Frank J, also from the Association of African Universities, reporting on parallel section 2B, and then the theme is funding and financing in Africa higher education. So a quick details of the section. We had Professor Peter Okebukola, President of Guni Africa. He was the chair for the section. We had two key speakers. Professor Ele Namila, Pro Vice Chancellor for University of Namibia. She was the first speaker, and then we had Professor Damtiu Tefera, higher education expert, University of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. He was also a speaker. Our session was mainly a discussion-based section. We didn't have any papers presented, but we had two speakers speak to the topic, and then we got the participants to share some experiences from their universities. So we had some vice chancellors tell us more about how they have been successful with raising revenue, and then also with some cost-cutting measures in their universities. So in summary, our section opined or came out with a point that many conferences and sections we've had even here have come with so many ideas to advance higher education in Africa. But the key challenge in most of the sessions had been that how do we fund these ideas to achieve excellence in higher education? And then we also noted that government funding has primarily been the traditional funding for higher education on the continent. And the post-COVID-19 and then the global economic downturn has also revealed that most governments are suffering. And for that matter, their funding to higher education is also on the decline. So the section now had to deliberate on ways in which we can improve our funding sources, and then also come out with some innovative financing methods. Not that alone, also look at some cost-cutting measures that can help higher education community. And when we're able to do that, at least we'll be able to bridge the gap between the financial difficulties we have in the universities, and then so that we'll be able to ensure long-term sustainabilities in the university. So some of the innovative financing options that the discussion came about with, the first of that is the University Industry Partnerships for Research and Innovation, where it is encouraged that the higher education community would have to strengthen our partnership with the industry so that we'll be able to generate some funding from industry towards our research that we are doing. And then the second point is that we need to also guard our intellectual property by ensuring that we have copyright and then patent rights for almost all our intellectual properties so that we'll be able to generate some revenue also from there. And then we also looked at creating endowment funds. And as we even saw, the Association of African Universities, we have an endowment fund. So if universities could also go that way by creating an endowment fund, would have some donations coming in from philanthropists and others. And then we should also get closer to our alumni communities, try to bring them closer to the university. And then by so doing, we can also create an alumni fund and then earn some financial support also from our alumni group. And then we can also enter into business. We can have investment income from profitable ventures. We know the higher education community has been the brain bank for most industries. So we can start incubating some of these businesses in our universities so that we can also generate some revenues also from this investment that we do. We also do research projects, and then we also do consultancy services. This is an area we can also amplify to ensure that we get funds for our investees. We look at expansion of the market-aligned courses. We can expand all those ones also to ensure that we increase our revenue. And then finally, we can also try and position our investees or higher education community to attract international students And this would contribute financially to the higher education community, and then also we would have some diversity in our university. Then the section also came up with some cost-cutting measures. The whole point is that though we want to bring in more funds, the little we have, we should also try as much as possible to manage it and then have an efficient use of these resources. So some of the cost-cutting measures that were discussed during the section, the first one, development of spending models for effective resource allocation. And here, we would have to take a critical look at our cost centers and then see how each of the cost centers impacts the goal of the university. And then based on that, we can allocate our resources according to the impact these cost centers have on our goals, and that would ensure efficient utilization of our resources. And then we can look at the second point, digitalization of the investor processes, and this could also reduce our operational costs. And by so doing, at least we would have efficient usage of our resources. And then we can look at some innovative cost-cutting measures. There are some universities that vice chancellors shared their experience that as of now, they are even moving from exploiting the national grid. Some are even going directly into solar, which in the long run will ensure that they get or they manage their costs so well in that area. And then finally, we should also leverage on the virtual learning for reduced infrastructure and transportation costs. Post-COVID, at least if COVID-19 didn't teach us so much, it taught us that we could still survive in the virtual arena. And for that matter, we can still try our e-learning courses, and that would also reduce most of the costs we incur on infrastructure and then transportation costs, amongst others. So basically, the section looked at the two areas, ensuring that we come out with innovative ways of funding, which I just explained. And then finally, we also look at cost-cutting measures. So we don't have to look at it from one way, not just pushing to get in the resources, but at least the little resources even we have now, we should also manage that effectively so that at least we'll be able to maximize the resources available to us. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Schneider Kweku Hankuma. I'm from the Association of African Universities. I was in this session. We are looking at excellence in higher education. So I was in the role of intellectual diaspora. So this is the lineup for my session. So as you can see, the session was chaired by Professor Elizabeth Olarinde, Vice President for Afi Babalola University. I have Professor Frederick Nafuko, who is also the Vice Provost at University of Washington, USA. I have Dr. Oloyede, also in Nigeria, Professor Konate, also in the USA, then Professor Tongnana, also in the UK. So as you can see, most of them are from the diaspora. The only person from Africa or based in Africa spent most of his time in the UK. So this was the diaspora session. So everything I'm saying here today, I am saying it being the voice of the diaspora. I'm the messenger. So as you can see, that is a beautiful picture of my diasporans. Sorry, I wouldn't say diasporans again. I would say global citizens. Okay, so the key messages. We did a reality check. And the reality is that most of the brilliant minds from Africa will end up in the diaspora. Sorry, they'll be global citizens. And that is something that we cannot run away from. But they told us we shouldn't worry. The diasporans say we shouldn't worry at all. That shouldn't be our problem. There is good news. they are willing to come back to collaborate, to help us solve the challenges that we face as a continent. So that is the good news. But the question is, are we ready? So, to them, for there to be any meaningful contribution to academic, the diasporans to make any meaningful contribution to Africa's education, we need to set the fundamentals. First of all, our universities need to be ready for them. National governments need to put in place policies that makes it friendly for them to collaborate with us. That is the message that they have for all of us. Then, they also mentioned that over there, they are going more into interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and also transdisciplinary researches. That is the enterprise over there. So before they can effectively collaborate, we need to also align ourselves. Our researchers need to start doing the same researches that they are doing over there. That way, we can create effective collaboration with them. So they suggested that we should have a digital collaboration model, which we can look upon to collaborate in a better and effective way. Now we know of the attrition rate. We always talk about attrition rate. It's high, and we know that Africans' population is also increasing. So you find that most of the faculty are moving away. The population of students here in Africa is also increasing. It's not ending. So we are worried about the attrition rate, and this really paints a gloomy picture for higher education in Africa. But thanks be to ICT, we have the Zoom, we have all other digital platforms where we can collaborate with them. So they need not come physically to Africa, but there are means and ways which we can collaborate with them using ICT. Professor Dr. Oleyede made this very clear in his presentation. Now we have the Carnegie Africa Diaspora Fellowship Program. You might have heard of this program and the model they use. It paints a very good and excellent model. It provides a blueprint for how Africans can collaborate with the diaspora in terms of research and excellence. Now, I'll give some recommendations or takeaways which the diaspora said I should share with you. They said to have, global citizens, to have any meaningful collaboration with the academic diaspora, every African university, and this is a charge to all of us, we should implement a clear collaboration policy. This will guide faculty, and this will also guide management. So we need to have this policy in place to guide how we interact with the diaspora. Now, to Professor Yewole, they said AAU should provide leadership, encourage, and support collaborations between the intellectual diaspora and African universities. This is a charge to Association of African Universities. Now, the idea of brain circulation, it shouldn't cost a lot of money. That is what they say. They said, look, we can do this in a very cost-effective manner through ICT, which we already mentioned, and the fact is they are ready to also support in various ways. Now, the reason why I said we shouldn't say diasporans, because it was made clear that when you say diasporans, it connotes something. It makes them feel, I don't know, they don't feel good about this tag, the diasporans. So they say we should now use a more inclusive, modern language, which is global citizens. So henceforth, let's try to refer to our diasporans as global citizens. Now, Carnegie is saying that if you're an African university and you need help, you need support in any area, you can put in a proposal to join the Carnegie African Fellowship Program. And they are accepting proposals. So this is to all of us. We should do that. Now, we should establish strong alumni networks. We shouldn't leave our alumni to just go away. We should establish networks with them. They are the pool that we can collaborate with. And then finally, we saw that we have the global citizens here. So in that point, we should task them to come up with a book titled Higher Education Excellence and the Role of Global Citizens. So this is a book which out of the session they are going to produce. And so maybe in the next COREVIP, we should be talking about this particular book from our global citizens. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to refer to what the Secretary General said about the need to make a lot of intervention and conversation which took place. And obviously the material was so much, probably wasn't all included in the recommendations, but I think some very good suggestions were made, and that stuff needs to be, I think, made available to the participants. One thing I want to comment about this brain circulation, because it happened in Asia where people from Silicon Valley returned to Asian countries, but for it to take place, there have to be favorable conditions in those countries. Otherwise, I know in my country, many people return from abroad to work, and after a while they left again, they went back. Either because they're not satisfied with the working conditions, the pay, of course, or they are not satisfied with the level of schooling they are getting for their children. And unless we rise to that level, then might not be tempting for many people who are already established in developed countries to come back. Right, now, before I proceed to Professor Omaj, our Rapporteur General, we're going to have some culture according to the program here, but I don't see the... Are you here? Are you there? Yeah, please, can you come forward? Are we getting an invisible band this afternoon or what? While I was here, I conveyed the greetings of Professor Hanoud Bia, a Sudanese, a member of the governing board who couldn't come here. The rebels broke into his house and asked him to leave everything and take his family and go. He's now a refugee in his own country. He had to travel and stay with relatives in the rural areas. And I also got news that they broke into my university and they took a safe in my office, which has all the important documents. I think they will be very cross with me when they took all that effort and break the safe wherever they are, and they discover that there is only papers, including my certificates.
Imasawana,
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like now to call on my friend, Professor Paul Omar, the Rapporteur General.
I greet all of you in the name of AAU. Paul Omar is my name. I'm a professor of criminology and security studies. You don't need to shake on your seats. I belong to the AAU family, but I'm not a staff of AAU. So you can see all of them that came out here, they were wearing this. I thought of distinguishing myself, that's why I wore a cap. So at least you know I am not a staff of AAU. I want to thank the organizers for the opportunity. Several words have been flying around at the conference, but most of them revolve around cooperation, collaboration, partnership. I can say that the AAU, the University of Namibia, and the government of the Republic of Namibia have actually demonstrated the spirits of these concepts. So I think it would be appropriate for us to celebrate these wonderful partners and collaborators for a job well done. Another thing that struck me as part of the background and context for this conference is the turning away from the usual deficit, defective narratives anytime we are talking about higher education in Africa. We have all our attentions directed to the issue of excellence and some successful initiatives, interventions, and outcomes. Now, this is a Word document, so I don't think I can control from here. So it's indeed very refreshing that in spite of the myriad of challenges, we are compelled, more or less, by the theme of the conference to look at some positive interventions. The opening ceremony set the tone for the conference. The leadership of the University of Namibia, of AAU, and the Republic of Namibia not only welcomed us, but they highlighted the history, the trends, and the challenges of the African higher education, just to affirm why advancing excellence in the sector was very important. I think participants would recall that that opening ceremony also emblemized excellence. The leaders were able to award some recognition trophies, to 6 illustrious African scholars. These are people whose contributions have been extraordinary and have had significant impact, putting the sector on the path to excellence. We already know who they are. When I met with my rapporteurs to design the format of presentation, we had something in mind, and then intuitively we felt like asking the Secretary General, which format would he prefer? Are we going to have a communique, and then later on we send in a comprehensive report? He felt that, look, communique is not his own way of doing things like this, that rather we should find a way of bringing out what participants can go away with and what we can tell the funders or the sponsors that their monies have been put to. So as I reflected on it, I thought one way to go is to take each of the parallel sessions and then tease out some strategic actions. So going through the sessions, I will be identifying 2 to 3 strategic actions, and I plead with you that if the session in which you presented does not bring out an important strategic action, but you want us to note them, I would encourage you that at the end of my presentation, you raise them so that my fellow rapporteurs will take note of them and will include them in the final report that will be coming to the AAU. The first, the opening ceremony that we held, the strategic actions that we identified from there are that African universities should advance excellence by increasing their relevance and responsiveness to their local and national problems. This, of course, was exemplified by what UNAM shared with us in producing those high-yielding seeds for Namibian farmers, and also training sniffer dogs during the COVID-19 to cost-effectively detect infection. The university should also advance excellence by learning from each other through robust dialogue, from networking platforms, sharing what they know, and asking about what they do not know. I think that phrase has caught the attention of many, which came from the Vice Chancellor of UNAM. What you know, share. What you don't know, ask. And I think that another strategic action that came out of that particular ceremony session is that we should be showcasing at appropriate fora those whose contributions put African higher education on the path to excellence. Again, what they did in terms of recognizing the 6 excellence ambassadors is illustrative of this particular action. Plenary session 2, we began to take keynote presentations. And the strategic actions that came from those presentations are as follows: that leaders of African higher education should advance excellence by continuing to urge national governments to meet the UNESCO agreed minimum level of educational funding of 4 to 6% of the GDP, or 15 to 20% of their public expenditure. Again, Namibia has exemplified that for us. You will recall that they, in their national budgetary allocations, have already surpassed, if not almost doubled, the UNESCO minimum levels. And one of the things that I thought I could emphasize here is the collective bodies of universities, like the Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian universities, can continue to hammer on these. I know we've done that before, And there are several other organizations across Africa that have the capacity and the persuasive influence to be able to get the government to focus on this aspect. One other strategic action that came out of that session is to actively foster collaborations, which will make the South-South cooperation we'll be talking about to be a reality. We need to take concrete actions, including the development of international postgraduate courses, scholarships, and academic exchanges between different parts of the South-South, Argentina, as an example, and Africa. The plenary session 3 keynote presentations raised the bar. And there we were able to tease out the following strategic actions. AAU should use the breadth of the coverage of those presentations to task the newly designated AAU ambassadors who represent their various regions to develop a blueprint for African higher education excellence in their various jurisdictions. Of course, AAU will now have to compile those contributions into a single book that will serve as a guide to advance excellence in Africa for the next 20 years. That was a proposal that came on the floor, and I think it was well received. Furthermore, AAU should encourage further South-South cooperation to enable deeper collaboration for mutual problem solving and academic exchange while decolonizing African higher education. Plenary session 4, there we looked at issues that have to do with open science policies and ICT programs that could help us. So the strategic actions that we have teased out from that session include the universities advancing excellence by implementing open science policies that build on dialogue with their senior management and university librarians or directors as a way of further expanding research infrastructures to empower, train, and support researchers, as well as improve the visibility and impact of their intellectual work. The second strategic action identified there is to encourage their ICT programs to assess the gaps in the internationalization of the domain names and email addresses. Of course, if they are able to do this, they can develop appropriate software applications that will support African local languages and bring them into digital inclusion. Plenary session 5, we looked at some of the key stakeholders. Some are publishers, others work on ranking, and the African SDG universities. The strategic actions that we teased out from there include the following. The universities, African universities should advance excellence by accessing large published resources derived from African scholarship, being student-centric, as well as benchmarking their programs against students' insights that have been harnessed through ranking metrics, and then increasing their visibility through integrating and reconnecting their curricula to the national developmental needs, Africa's Agenda 2063 aspirations, and the global 17 SDGs. Plenary session 6, we had a launch of a particular partnership, and this is to do with the coming together of a UNAM and UWC in running a program called Purpose Equipping Environment and People Research Leadership Program. I think what was very critical there was the initiative that one university took in visiting the other. And in the process of discussing, they discovered that they share a number of things, values, their goals, and themes. So African universities that have such similarities should advance excellence by partnering with one another to foster leadership development for their staff, as exemplified by this particular partnership I referred to, and also to ensure that the skills they provide are able to guide the staff and students particularly under volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous conditions, which to some extent characterize some aspects of African university education landscape. Then the universities should proactively equip their students with awareness and leadership skills to negotiate the changes that happen around them. And this is very critical in achieving continental and global goals. Plenary session 7. This has to do with gender equity in African higher education. The strategic actions that we teased out from there are that the university should advance excellence by promoting gender equality and inclusivity through establishing robust policy frameworks against sexual discrimination, harassment, and violence, and also generating gendered disaggregated data to assist research, publications on gendered barriers and gendered corrective interventions. I hope I'm not running too fast for you. I have to do this because it's a fair bit to cover. The next plenary session, that's session 8, again witnessed the launch of the Africa Charter for Transformative Research Collaborations. The various agencies that came together to get this underway are listed for us there. And of course, we have recognized the role that Pariboli Africa Research Center at the University of Bristol played, along with University of South Africa and University of Cape Town. The strategic actions from that particular session include the following. African universities should advance excellence by working with AAU to drive the signing of the charter. Most of the VCs at the conference, they have already done so. So I think we should take this back home in our various countries, and the peak bodies also should assist in making sure that their universities are sensitized to this particular charter. And then the universities should ensure that they drop this beggarly mentality when we go for collaborative works, especially with the global north. The university should leverage their resources, and we were reminded very powerfully that these resources do not have to be monetary. Okay? They can be in kind, they can be in materials, but when you do so, stand as equity partners, not a beggar coming to meet the global superior to help you out of your problems. And then, in fact, the universities need to take steps to challenge negative perceptions, drawing on the principles and aspirations of the Charter. I've had the occasion to do that not long ago during my visit to Russia. Of course, unless you provide a counter narrative. What people know is what they believe about you. And information unchallenged becomes the truth. And that is why African universities, we have a lot of work to do in challenging negative perceptions about our capabilities. Plenary session 9 is about youth mobility for Africa. This is the flagship initiative that Africa, Europe, the European Union have actually put together. And it was a panel discussion. The few strategic actions that we picked from there are that the African universities should promote internal cooperation among African higher education institutions, and then develop the local mobility opportunities, which will help in getting our young people to address some of the challenges that they face now or in the future. Secondly, the African universities should support intercontinental mobility, but it should be both ways, not just one way. If Africans are going to Europe, and unfortunately some have paid the ultimate price in the process of trying to run away from Africa, we should also have an opportunity to bring people from the other end to our continent. Of course, we have the security challenges, we have the power challenges or electricity challenges. But one of the things that I have come to appreciate is wherever your passion is, you can survive all the vicissitudes. Some of us lived outside the country. We are no longer referred to as diasporans. We are referred to as what? Global citizens. In my own global citizenship days or years in Australia, I know how much I had to confront, but by adjustment, I was able to survive there and, capacity build myself and come back to the continent to help my people. So let it be that the intercontinental mobility that we encourage should build international networks and increase our peer learning from the programs of those other countries. Plenary session 10 is about a number of presentations were made, about 4 of them on the HAQUA initiative. We got some results that were presented. The Bloomberg Media Initiative also made some presentations. And then we have, the driving teaching and learning excellence through partnership and collaborations. The strategic actions that we teased out from there are: 1, that African universities should engage with the relevant stakeholders to leverage their offerings or services for the professional training and harmonized mobility frameworks that can enrich the experiences of our students and faculty. 2, or B, to establish institutional information management systems that can, create and support accurate data for research, human capital development, regional accreditation, and student/faculty mobility. Thirdly, African universities should encourage the academics to take advantage of the Ubuntu Net. I believe that I think they shared with us they have some funding to increase academic authorship, and in particular to produce textbooks that will become more widely available in Africa. Plenary session 11, we had about 3 presentations from there, and the strategic actions that we have teased out include the following. 1, that African universities should guide their students and faculty to tap into the scientific communities, such as developing excellence in leadership in Africa, Deltas, and the Grand Challenges Africa, which have been created by Science for Africa Foundation. There, I'm sure they can, secure funding for their PhD and postdoctoral programs, and as well enhance the science leadership and careers that they need to pursue as they bring about more excellence in our system. We also received a presentation which would cause us as African universities to consider in-house as opposed to vendor-based development of our learning management systems. And we also need to support our ICT faculty to participate in relevant courses. And of course, an example that was given is a training that is coming for advanced Moodle course, and to be delivered by our own, or specialists that are homegrown, or at least they are indigenous to Africa. Our universities should take note of that. Our universities should stake their institutional brands in areas of their excellence and register with African Research, Innovation, and Development Network. You recall that our SG made a very passionate presentation on this particular initiative, and the aim is to get empowered so that you can deploy research to contribute to developments in the continent. I recall that I've had several exchanges with the SG, and it's about pain to see that we have so many universities in Africa, but we are not able to service our developmental needs. I think that hopefully this particular network would encourage more work targeted at developing our own continent. And finally, there is the learning, a strategic outcome or action there, which is about contributing to the AAU Endowment Fund. Again, this is a legacy initiative for the long-term financial viability and independence of AAU as the voice of the African higher education. If you are here and you are still not convinced about this initiative, then I think we need to pay you a special visit, because it is an initiative that no African university can afford not to be part of. And it's not just you contributing, but selling the message across your various networks. Somebody said, and I completely agree, that we have more than enough billionaires on the African continent to support AAU. And AAU will now be able to, if you like, dance the African dance. Instead of, what they say, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So we have a lot of work to do there. The plenary 12 witnessed the launching of the China-Africa University Section Consortium. Of course, it was a very fascinating ceremony that was undertaken. So many, precise activities took place. What are some of the strategic actions that we can derive from there as we pursue or seek to advance excellence? One is to diversify our collaborations and partnerships into China, which have now emerged as a major hub for technological and industrial development. And also joining the China-Africa Universities Exchange Consortium, which was launched during the conference. Of course, we need to remind ourselves that a platform is being set up on the AAU website, and it will take the first 50 registrations. If not for the working on this rapporteur executive summary, I should have gone there and registered my university immediately. So I hope by the time I get there, there should still be space. Plenary session 13. This is the creation of AAU continental offices. This happened while I was here, so I've not had the time to really tease out the actions that should be there. But I believe that those of you who were there, you would recall that it is important to, leverage these offices to enhance and promote our collaboration, cooperation, and partnership across the world. Let me close with these few thoughts. The conference that we are participating in has held against the backdrop of significant paradoxes in the African higher education. We noticed from several presentations that there has been a phenomenal growth in student enrollment. Yes, that has helped a little bit to address the issue of access. But ironically, or paradoxically, it has also produced many challenges for quality, equity, and research. As the student numbers are growing, I think somebody mentioned that even with attrition, we are confronted with larger classes and little attention to individual needs of our students. So that's a paradox. There's another paradox of, financial injection into the area. Yes, these challenges that I mentioned are there, and we need to confront them. We have been able to foster some stronger capacities for national, social, and economic advancement. The only thing is that we are yet to indeed dent what I call the high, or in fact, the VC of UNAM made reference to these extreme poverty and hunger vulnerability indices. So these paradoxes are there. However, advancing excellence in African higher education remains the most needful effort against them. And interestingly, just moving around and listening to some of the presentations, we took the concept of excellence for granted or as a given. I thought that it is indeed very important for us to bear in mind what comes to us when we hear the word excellence. When we started our rapporteurs meeting the first day, I asked all of us there, what comes to mind when you hear excellence? And these are some of the things that the rapporteurs brought out. Out of the ordinary, exceeding high expectation, outstanding, object of distinction, and impeccable quality. As African universities, advancing excellence in the African higher education, we must pursue the strategies that have emerged from the various sessions in this conference. And I believe that in doing so, we should be guided by the standards that are inherent in the thoughts about excellence from the rapporteurs. Once again, I want to thank you for the opportunity. As I said, if there are strategic actions that we have not picked up from the session where you participated or where you delivered your own presentation, feel free to bring them to our attention, and we would include them in the revised version that will be going to the AAU Secretary General. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Professor Omaj, for this very efficient and effective presentation and emphasis on very important points. Now, before we go into our closing remarks, I think many of us just wanted to have a second dose of the beautiful talent of our young guys. So the cultural group, can you come forward, please? Oh. You want to comment on this? Yeah, after the dancing. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My colleague, vice chancellors, above 50 years of age, please don't try this at home. You will end up in the orthopedic department of the nearest hospital. Right. Now, can I call on my colleague, Professor Olushola Oyaoli, to give his... Oh, yes, of course, I promised to. Okay, please, go ahead. Professor
It's
Peter.
only to submit a motion of deep appreciation to the rapporteur team, ably led by Professor Paul Omaji, who was the Rapporteur General the last meeting we held, this COREVIP 2023, in Egypt. As a very good wine is matured, we got this outing. It's a tremendous improvement over what we had in Egypt. So I want to commend him, commend all the wonderful, very brilliant staff that we have in AAU that supported him. The job of a Rapporteur General is not easy. I believe that you hardly put in more than 2 hours of sleep over the last 4 days. So I would like us to appreciate the service that Professor Paul Omaji has given. Second thing to say is that it is good practice that at the end of a very successful event like this, we should not just go. The thing is hanging. There should be, at this closing session, some document, some 2-page thing that will be the declaration. There are several words, even if you don't want to use communicate. The conference statement, the conference declaration, or the conference resolution. That should be the pinnacle of what we are doing here. So that when, just a 2-page thing, and in my view, it's easy to attain. All of those strategic actions that you listed, what we needed to do was to do some distillation or extraction. Just bring all of them together and prioritize them. Because I was watching, you had almost like 4 pages of those things. So 2 pages of those, and at the end of it, all it will do is read out that declaration. And they will all applaud. And that makes it, of course, now law. So that by tomorrow, the media, everybody in the world, in Africa, in Nigeria, Africa, rest of Africa, and the world will know what we have all agreed here. Or something is hanging. Look, I was Rapporteur General for 2 UNESCO World Conferences. The last one being 2008. And in 2008 UNESCO World Conference, look, it was, I talked about 2 hours of sleep for you. I had almost no sleep. But at the plenary, the last plenary, after consulting with everybody, DG, UNESCO and all of that, we had just 1 page of statement, which I read out. And the entire 192 countries that attended clapped for that. So what am I suggesting? I'm suggesting that, 1, we adopt the draft that he has provided us and ask him, the SG, and whoever want the president, to see how they can quickly distill a 2-page declaration signed by the Secretary General that we can take to our different countries. I so submit. Is that a good thing? Thank you. Second thing that I would like to say is that the report from one of the groups, the rapporteur said, and I hope I didn't hear him correctly. He said that most of the bright minds are outside Africa. That is derogatory. The corollary, and I hope I will not go to see it in the report. The corollary is that the likes of the Vice Chancellor of Cape Coast that is here is a dreg. It's not a bright mind, it's a dull mind. The likes of Professor Lilian Salami, who is one of the best experts in home economics and nutrition education, who is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Benin, is a dull mind. I think we should not go with that derogatory thing. So some people gathered themselves together in the parallel session and came to the conclusion that diaspora is not a word. That is not correct. Diaspora is still a label recognized by the UN. So you can't come and say you are global citizens. Thank you. Who is not a global citizen? Go and look at the definition of global citizenship. My VC of ABU there, because it's in Zaire, does not make it a national, it's a global citizen. So I think we should purge ourselves of these obnoxious statements. Thank you.
Thanks for your contribution, Professor. I want to tell you one thing. If you run for president of Nigeria, I will vote for you. Although I'm not Nigerian. Okay, right. I will let the Secretary General answer this and then give us his remarks. Thanks.
Dear Vice Chancellors, professors, colleagues, and friends, let us leave this conference to pursue excellence in our various universities. Let us connect to the various initiatives that we have showcased in the course of this conference. Let us ensure that we are in active partnership and collaboration with universities outside our various countries. Let us recognize our own staff, our own teachers and researchers who are doing great works, and let us celebrate them and celebrate their excellence as we have done in this conference. As leaders, just as we've highlighted in this conference, let us ensure that we leave great legacies in the place where we are now. Let us go home and ensure that we continue to support AAU by paying our annual dues as we should. As we travel back, let us enjoy our trips back home. But before I close, let me express our appreciation to the Vice Chancellor, staff and students of the University of Namibia, led by Professor Matengu, I want to specially thank the LOC for this conference. You've done marvelously well. I also want to thank the drivers who picked us up from the airport, staff of the university, who spent many hours standing at the airport
to ensure that we are here. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank on your behalf, on my behalf, all the ushers, and the special UNAM choir that have entertained us today. The Vice Chancellor said the students leave all the time, but the voice of this choir remains the same. I also want to thank the technicians and the people in the technical team. Staff of this hotel and the cooks that were hidden in the kitchens. Most of us who eat over there have heard the comment of everybody saying that the food is good. Finally, I want to be put on record that the Association of African Universities is highly appreciative of the government of Namibia. And the people of Namibia. And I also want to thank the various universities that enter into partnership with each other. Since it has been raised that we should bring up the final communique, I will give you one, and I want to do it on your behalf, that following the various deliberations of the rectors, vice chancellors, and provosts of African universities, we have resolved to commit ourselves to pursue excellence in our higher education system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, last but not least, I was in the restaurant by the pyramids in Egypt, was it 2 weeks ago? And then I was looking for a place to sit, and I said, oh, I should go and sit next to that good-looking young man. And he introduced himself as the Vice Chancellor of the University of Namibia. Professor Matengo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I was thinking that I'm at risk of committing a sin. And many of you would know that there are only two types of sin. One, a sin by omission, which is one that you... The sin of omission, than which you know, which you do unknowingly. And then there is a sin by commission, one which you do knowing that it is wrong. And I think over the days you may have realized that I didn't talk much about UNAM, because this is AAU, it's Africa, and we're just the host. So I would like you to permit me to take not more than 5 minutes just to say a few things about the University of Namibia. Just as a way of sharing how we are trying to improve access to higher education, as well as what we do to increase excellence. So I'll try to run this very quickly. These are facts, I think you know them, I'm not gonna this will be shared. I just want to get to a few things. One is to say, with all this infrastructure and setup that we have, according to Times Higher Education, we are ranked number 16th in Africa. And I think we are in the top 800 globally. So that's good. But I just wanted to point to you that land is not our problem. As a university, we have a total of more than 30,000 hectares across the country. And we thank our government for these different donations in ensuring that the approach we have taken is that people must not come to higher education. We take higher education to the people. And that's why you have seen that we are distributed like that. Now, I want to give some examples of some of the things we have discussed regarding partnerships, regarding doctoral training. This is one of our campuses. You have seen there that we have 12 campuses in different parts of the country. In Windhoek, we have 4, so if you see. But the one that is, this Namibia basically looks like a pan. The panhandle part is where this campus is, in Katima-Mulilo. It's bordering Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Angola. And there's this trans-frontier boundary park where we are building a center of excellence in wildlife management and ecotourism. It's a 15 million euro grant that we are building an infrastructure. And I would like to invite those of you who are training in the field of wildlife management and ecotourism to work with us. This is a natural laboratory where we are looking also in establishing a center of excellence in One Health, environment, people, and animals. So this is one example that we would like to really work with you. In fact, we are having a research forum in which we are going to define the research areas for the next 5 years for this particular area. Some of our research that may be of interest to you is that we host the high energy stereostethoscope system, which is generally is called the HES, in which we have trained internationally more than 250 scientists in astronomy. The Namibian number is much smaller than maybe 15 or so who have graduated from this, but the majority are international from France, UK, US, everywhere. But we are building the African Millimeter Telescope, which is a 30 million euros project. We signed the agreement a month ago. And we would like those of you who are training in astronomy, astrophysics, to partner in this field. Then green hydrogen, as you know, the world is shifting on its energy focus from fossil fuels. We have established this Green Hydrogen Research Institute. And the approach we have taken, because Namibia is going to start the production of green hydrogen by 2030 or so, a little less, we have decided we're going to send people for school, PhDs and masters. And the photo that you see there is our future teachers who are being appreciated by the German ambassador. We have sent people for PhDs in hydrogen safety, material compatibility, and failure analysis. Those are our future teachers. The last thing is, as I said, One Health concept. This is also very important. I wouldn't speak more about that in the interest of time. We also, in one of our farms, we produce rice. Can you imagine that in a dry place like this, you can produce rice? But we do. And Nila Lake is the national climate, the University of Namibia is the National Climate Change Monitoring Center. We fly drones to monitor the climatic changes, and we report annually to the different reporting agencies of the UN. And we're also hosting a plant and animal genetics bank. Again, those who would want to work with us, we will be very happy. The last interesting thing is that, rabies is a global problem. And in Namibia, rabies is not just in dogs and other, it's also appearing in kudus. Maybe you have ate, actually, this meat in one of the restaurants, not the one that has rabies. But we have been thinking, because they are wild, how do we vaccinate them from rabies? And our vets and scientists have been experimenting. They put the concentration of the vaccine into an acacia pod. And from there, they hang them in the trees and then they monitor using cameras which kudu has eaten this pod, and then they are able to tranquilize them and drain and check whether the antibodies have increased, and they do. So this is very important because we are very big in game farming as a country. And this is just one way of how do you innovate around vaccinating game, which are not like domesticated animals. And we have a boma in which we do a lot of interesting things. If you are training in veterinary medicine, wildlife veterinary medicine, talk to us. We're happy to share the facilities and knowledge that we have accumulated. Second last thing is that this is how the distribution of our graduates is globally. You can see where we get students and what they do once they graduate. My colleagues, when I showed my colleagues, they told me, no, we have actually added 4 more countries in the far southeastern Asia. Some students who have joined us in medicine. And so this is how the universities of Namibia is playing its part in knowledge generation, in human resource production, and competency building and excellency. Last, I just want to say, somebody asked the question, why Africa is poor? You have heard this question? Why is Africa poor? And he thought he should experiment it on young kids. I'll not say where the country this was done, but he took a group of kids and said, you must compete for these sweets. The one who is going to win will be the beneficiary of these sweets. And to his surprise, when he counted 1, 2, 3, and go, they held hands and ran together. And he thought sweets are not a tempting thing enough. He elevated it to a bag of maize meal and meat. They did the same. He offered the car that he was driving, and they still held hands and ran together. And he concluded that this is the reason why Africa is poor, because there's no competition. No one must win. Do you think he was right? No. He misunderstood the value that Africa has of fairness, of justice, of not leaving anyone behind. And it is my view that the charter that we signed and the discussions that we have will enable us as universities to make sure nobody is left behind. As the old African adage says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But I would like to conclude that also to say, there's a lot we can learn from nature. Even the termites and the bees work together. And we rise and grow by holding each other's hands. Let's do that together. And finally, the University of Namibia has really been privileged to host all of you. Where we have done something wrong or untoward, forgive us. Where we have done very well, thank the Namibian people. And thank yourselves for making it easier for us to host you. When we were bidding for this, we had a lot of discussions of how do we make this unique. And we concluded the best way we can do this is really just to be available, to be open, to embrace everybody. Namibia is a small country, 2.5 million people, although geographically it's over 800,000 square kilometers. But it's very diverse, as you have seen from the different musical groups, more than 20, 30 ethnic groups. So it's very heterogeneous. And it helps us, that background, in hosting a diverse group like you did. So thank you so much for enabling us to host you, and we hope that you'll go home with a memorable experience. SG, I want to seek your permission to also recognize, I think the chairs of the last two sessions, Prof. Demtev. Are you here? Yeah, please, I think we didn't give you your token of appreciation. Is it here? And while we're doing, I just want to say, and I hope I'm not breaking any protocol, Prof. Next year we are hosting RU Forum, AGM, and those of you who are in the training of agriculture and related fields, we are more than happy to have you here again. This year it is in Cameroon. The first vice president is hosting that in October. If you haven't registered, please do. RU Forum is a very good partner of AAU. There's no competition. We are sharing. Thank you very much. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Professor Matangu, for your wise and beautiful words, for your beautiful country and beautiful people. At least one thing I got from coming here is that if war does not stop in my country, I know where to apply for asylum. Now, the Secretary General showed up with a bouquet of flowers. Let us find out what he's up to.
Before that, I've been told that there are still some people who want to sign the Africa Charter for Transformative Research Collaboration. Please, who is the person having the form? Can you? Yes. Please, if you want to sign and you are yet to sign that charter, see him after the closing to be able to do that. Permit me at this time to please call on the chair of the LOC, UNAM, Professor Indongo. Since UNAM won the bid for hosting this conference, she has worked day and night, invested her time, especially with various calls in the night from Accra, and she has mobilized her team to do a great job. On behalf of AAU and the whole of the Vice Chancellors from Africa, we want to give you this. Not that alone, please. My team came to me and said, these people have worked very hard, the LOC. And they said, we need to appreciate them. I told them the Vice Chancellor of the university will appreciate them. But they said they will not agree to that. And they feel that we should also appreciate the LOC with this small token. Thank you very much.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say a couple of words. I think Prof. Peter referred to our meeting last time in Cairo, and truly, we've come a long way. And I just want to end by thanking each and every one of you for your passion, persistence, for your interventions, your engagement. You created such a rich learning environment in this conference. I don't remember. We'll do that. Okay, thanks. The same place in the law. Right. I learned as much as I have learned from this conference. Professor Matengu is inviting all delegates. Last time. Thank you very much, Prof. So, for every beginning, there is an end. Thank you very much. Please travel safely. I declare this conference closed.